Disclaimer. Some of the views, beliefs, and ideas that I hold in this video, I do not anymore. If you want my current beliefs, views, and ideas, which I do hold right now, check out my other socials in the description down below. Welcome to the JTF Show Podcast. Now, here's your host, JTF. Welcome back. Before we begin, I do need to say this. God is Gray and the other lady, if you are listening to this, or anybody, but just in general, I sinned. I said, if these two people were married, that would be funny or silly. I shouldn't have said that. I was tired and worn out, and what they said, I guess, about marriage in a sense of a way, I still shouldn't have said that. I'm not excusing myself for that. I'm not making an excuse for that. That was wrong of me, and I'm sorry. Please forgive me, God is Gray and the other lady. I'm so sorry for saying that. I hope and pray you have a good and blessed marriage. Lady with God is Gray. I'm sorry, I keep forgetting her name. I'm sorry about that as well. And God's Gray, if you are married, I pray and hope you have a blessed marriage that will live on for a very long time. But yes, and also I need to ask God for forgiveness. I already did, but since I did it publicly, I should apologize publicly. So Heavenly Father, Lord Savior Jesus Christ, Holy Spirit, please forgive me for saying what I said about God's Gray and the other lady, that if they're married, that's funny because of what they said. That was wrong of me. Please forgive me for saying that. Thank you, Heavenly Father, Lord Savior Jesus Christ, Holy Spirit, that I will never do anything like that again. I truly thank you for that, and I truly thank you that you will help me to never do something like that again. I truly thank you for that. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen, amen, amen. So we got that out of the way. In this case, I'm going to be more self-controlled, and I'm not as worn out this time. So, if you need more context, please look at the previous episode of my podcast.
There is a reason for that. Because if you can identify with the ideals of beauty, then it's easier for you to believe that you're closer to God. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They look alike.
So what you're saying is, since Jesus is white, and to be more beautiful, you had to be white? I mean, I don't necessarily think that's why. Generally, the reason why Jesus is usually white is because of Europeans most likely using Christianity more than other religions. And just in general, geographically, Jesus would have been a little bit whiter, fair-skinned. Black? Maybe. That's not a racist thing, that's just geographically accurate. It was Middle Eastern, so, just saying. But there could have been, now, Jesus does have some African heritage. Since he's the Son of God, he had to have heritage from all of the races. He had to have a lot of heritage from all the races, including blacks, obviously. So maybe Jesus wasn't black per se, but he most likely had some black heritage, because he had to. Like Adam and Eve had to be, mixed, because they were the first human beings. It would make sense.
Like him, but I'll never look like that. There's nothing I can do about it. So ideals of beauty, and it goes beyond body positivity. It goes beyond all of that. It is self-esteem,
I mean, it's truly, truly, truly mind-blowing that he is painted white. When
It's mind-blowing. Again, it's not really that much mind-blowing because, one, most of the population in Western European nations are white, and two, usually more white people are in power or have or have authority more than blacks. It's pretty obvious why. Some are systemically racist, others may be a cycle. Some Christians believe that God let all the three sons of Noah have particular power in particular generations. If I'm correct, the first one was the people of Ham, which were blacks. You can see that in early age, blacks were very powerful, Egyptian, African, and then if I'm correct, the Asians were the second to have a lot of power. The dynasties and how China was and is today, and now it's the white son. Sorry, the white. Is it Japheth? I think it's Japheth that's the white one, or is it Shem? Sometimes I get that mixed up, but the people of the white one, not trying to be racist, but the people of the white one, or I guess the last in line when it comes to power, and the cycle is kind of slowly turning back. You see a lot more black representation. Maybe not all that much, but I think it is kind of coming back. I think another cycle is going to happen, if that theory is true or not. I don't necessarily think so, but in some cases I can see how God tried to have like an equal had the sons of Noah, the three sons of Noah, to have equal powers beyond of the generations. I mean, I guess that would make sense, but I mean, I don't think so in some cases. Or God, in a sensible way, let them have that power and then all that. It just depends. I don't necessarily think so, but yeah, that's why Jesus seems to be white, because you live in a more of a majority white population, and also just because white people had a lot of authority and power. And Jesus was a type of person who was famous and had some authority and power. Floor level here. Floor level. If you don't know what floor level is, pretty much I go to floor level as in I just go to basics. Then I go up until I say like spiritual things or things that are a little bit more Christian. But first I go down to general level. I want to say down to general level, but I go to that level sometimes, and then I just build up with people. Like, where do I come from? My parents. Where they come from? Their parents and their parents. Well, where did those came from? God. Or how do you wake up? My brain helps me wake up. Well, where does your brain come from? God. But that's a little bit blunt in a sensible way, but you get what I mean. That's what I do. I don't just immediately go spiritual or go to God. I thank God, because God's the source for my brain to wake up, so I to God, thank you for waking me up. But I know how I woke up. My brain, kind of, flipped the switch in a sensible way, but where did the brain come from? God. So you just thank God because you're thanking the source in a lot of cases, which you don't have to. But I wouldn't say thank my brain. My brain came from something else. The source was God in my belief. But when it comes to like somebody saying how do you wake up? Well, I wake up. Well, how do you do that? Well, my brain does it. Well, where's your brain? In my head. Where's your brain made of? Blah, blah, blah. Where does that come from? God. Again, being a little bit blunt, but that's what I do, from ground level to higher level, in a sense of a way. Depending on who I'm talking about. So, yeah, let's continue.
Know damn well exactly where he was. And
Whoa, fam. Whoa, I can't just let that slide. Whoa. Sorry, people, I didn't know he was actually gonna curse. Well, that means he's not a Christian. Well, I mean, of course. Listen. They're misinformed believers by, well, boy, I don't know. I don't know, fam. Yeah, I don't think that's very Christian of you, which it isn't. I mean, I don't know. I mean, personally, for me, I don't think they're Christian. I mean, I'm gonna be blunt. They're Christian by name alone. Let's be real here. But they still deserve some respect. I feel like they think that they are Christian, but they're lost. And you need to pray for them. You need to help them out. You don't need to condemn them all the time. But being honest, I, I don't know if these people are really Christians, like true Christians at the end of the day. I think they have Christian like values, but are they truly Christian? I would need to know more of them. But based on that, unless if you've repented, and you repent privately sometimes, But with something like that, I would have repented publicly, which I did in a sensible way, as if in this episode, because I said something disrespectful. But saying that they're not Christian, depending on how you say it, could be disrespectful, but I'm just being a little bit blunt because, come on, Christians don't curse. Like, come on. I mean, I do anti-language or anti-cursing. I'm against cursing so much that I replace cursing with something else like darn or dang. I wouldn't use the actual D word, but for some people who might be there where sadly cursing is like their second language, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna curse, but I'm going to anti-curse, as I would say it. Don't like cursing so much that I replace it with something because I understand some people cursing is their second language, which is sad, but how can I communicate with them? Well, I don't need to keep doing F-bombs. I can say fish or frick in some cases, or flip. It just depends. But that's how I view that. But jeez, dude, you didn't have to do the D word. There's darn well. I know, but come on. Like, no. Like, I allow some little cursing, because once I understand, but, all views in a sensible way, but I am still a Christian channel. I can't just let any type of cursing slide. I just can't let it go all in to the atmosphere in a sensible way. But it just depends. But generally, I should have watched this before, but again, one day when I have time, I will do that. I'm not saying that I wouldn't do it. I would if I had enough time to watch something that's an hour long, which I don't. So when I just see it and I hear most of it, I'm like, maybe I should do a video on it or a podcast. Sometimes I talk to God about it. I'm like, yeah, I think I should. It's like, well, should you? Like, But anyways, let's continue.
Where he came from.
Sadly, though, many people are convinced that he was white.
Wait, are you?
Wait. Do you think he's black? Are we? Oh no. Are we going there? Like, it's not like a racist thing to say that Jesus wasn't black. Just how you do it. It was like, oh, Jesus wasn't black. He wouldn't be with Black Lives Matter. Like, calm down, please. No, please, my dude, please. What you should say is, well, let's think of this geographically and not just based on, well, feeling, being honest. Jesus was in the Middle East. Type in Middle Eastern people, or what Middle Eastern people look like. They may look more white. Sorry, not more white. They look white, fair skin, and in some cases, are black. Because the Middle East is not really, it doesn't have that much of a black population, but it does have black people. Like with Africa, you don't have a big white population. You have some white Africans. It's very rare, but you do kind of have them. So it's like in a geographical thing, like just based off history, okay? But I don't know. Let's see.
Telling me that people actually are saying that he was born in Jerusalem, but that he was white because
there are people that believe that.
why?
Okay.
What? Because we're superior and you just have to believe it.
Well, not just that, but just because all their life they've seen a white Jesus. I wouldn't say because of superiority. In some cases, yes. In some cases, yes. But most of the time, it's just, I mean, it was like a given, kind of. Depending on who you're talking about, depending on how they see white Jesus as, I guess you can say, quote unquote white Jesus. There's only one Jesus, so anyways, like, yeah, I saw, I mean, I've seen Jesus white, because that's just, like, if you just type in Jesus, images of Jesus, you see white. I mean, is it racist? I would need to know the history of why Jesus seemed white, and just based on the majority who believe in Christianity is Western Europeans, and Western Europeans are white, so I mean, there's more to it, most likely. And also, yes, white people are, in some cases, superior, or they're more powerful, so therefore somebody like Jesus would be considered white for some people, obviously. But in other cases, it's just cultural, or geographical, or regional. It just depends. I need to know more.
There are people that believe that. There are people that have told me, like, but Jesus was white. Nope. There is nope.
That's
Absolutely not.
It's like, yeah, like, nope, cursing in Christianity, nope, no cursing, so, yeah. Like, if we're talking about those type of people, then yeah, but if you're, like, talking about, like, godly people, like, I think that children should have some sort of discipline, productive, but also understanding that if you do this, there is consequences, and you do it in the right way, and you explain why you do it and how you do it. And if I agree, then okay. If I disagree, we might talk about it. I mean, like, God is great, and the other lady and me, I think we would all agree that spanking is not the only option. I think the real conversation is should spanking be a thing. I think that spanking, me personally, should be a last resort. If, like, some kids need one good whack in a sense of a way. Not, I wouldn't say harmful, because you're harming the child. You're physically putting force that is harming the child when you spank them. But of course, you wouldn't say harm, because obviously, like, if it's like one, like, then maybe. It just depends how you spank your child, which I only want to get into, because spanking has been used now more as a negative for good reasons. So again, for me, I think if the child is going a little bit too violent and just not listening, it seems like one spank could stop it. Maybe it just depends. We need to go deeper into that in a sense of a way. But generally, I think that spanking should be a last resort. Going to your room would be more better. And going to your room is not just, just let them go to their room. How does that help? If you take their toys away, if you stand guard, quote unquote, if you just, and then they did think of what they did, and they're just standing there, they actually, like, think about it, and they're actually, like, even praying about it. That's more productive than this, a hit in a hug. Like, no. Being honest, spanking kind of just never worked for me, so going to my room really worked, because I didn't want to be in my room. I want to do other things. That's not torturous, because going to a room is not necessarily the equivalent, but it makes more sense, because in our system, if you break the law, you go to a room, maybe alone, with really nothing there for you, and you have to rethink of what you did, maybe for a very long time. So going to your room will make more sense, because going to your room is the harmless, in a sense of a way, version of going to jail. Spanking, unless you're a family that fights a lot physically, it's not really gonna help you in future in adult life. Because spanking is not a legal thing that we do here in America, which we shouldn't. We don't do that anymore. So it would make sense to do the go to your room than the spanking, because in adult life, if you break the rules, you go to a room. So it makes sense going to your room as a child, you understand. If you're an adult, you gotta go to a worser room, which is jail. That makes more sense. But again, we, just have a conversation with it. Again, I'm not saying that everybody who spanks their child is abusive, but how you do it, it depends. Like, what you do, how many do you do, what belt do you use, if you use a belt. If I'm correct, you can't use hands because adult hands are for blessing the children. I think that's what the Bible said. That's what my dad said once, so that's why they did the belt and not the hand, which makes sense. Your hand should not be of hitting, it should be of blessing. I think it says something like that somewhere. But yeah, let's continue.
Terribly harmful. And that again goes for all of us, except the way that white people behave is what's considered good behavior.
What?
In what way?
In what way? In what world do people think that how white people behave is the good one, instead of the Nick Fuenteses of the world? Only they might think that. And they're a big I wouldn't say big. They're a minority. Like, what? Who thinks this? This isn't new information of the day. This is just straight up, like, in what reality? In what reality do people say white people's behavior, especially white children behavior, is good behavior, guys? We should do that. I haven't heard anybody said that at all. Except people like Nick Fuentes and Richard Spencer, which are Nazis and openly racist people. Obviously, they would say that, but not even the conservatives who think that voter fraud exists would say that. Even they wouldn't. Like, who? I mean, this was what? I think 2019, 2020, March 9th, 2020. So, I mean, yeah, way before the election, but I mean, like, come on, who thinks this? Where is she getting this? I'm very curious. If anybody knows, maybe send me a link if you can. Like, what? Like, who is saying this? CNN?
I don't know if you've noticed, but well,
no one has noticed.
So I'll
I
go.
probably haven't noticed.
Yeah.
We haven't. None of us haven't.
So, indigenous and children that were children of enslaved people were hurt really badly by either the colonizers or by the slave owners if they didn't behave perfectly like the colonizers expected.
So, a long time ago. Okay, you could have clarified. Did you know that a long time ago, people thought that white behavior was the good behavior? Like, when was that? Well, it was during this time. But you blatantly I wouldn't say blatant. I think blatant, if I'm using that correctly. You just said that some people think that how white people behave is good behavior. I'm like, who thinks this at this time? And then she's like, well, back then. I'm like, you could have clarified that a little bit more. Like.
To behave. So both indigenous and enslaved people became really, really strict parents. So,
well, not just that, but just the Bible and how strict the Old Testament was, and that's the big problem here. The reason why maybe some people are progressive Christians instead of Christian conservatives is because Christian conservatives and conservative Christians alike usually tend to say the Old Testament scriptures instead of the new one. I'm just saying, this is general. And I think this is what God's shown me, because it makes sense. We're New Testament followers. So therefore, I think we should use the Old Testament reflecting how God was physically with sin, how he is spiritually with sin now. Use more New Testament scriptures to prove our points about how abortion's wrong or something like that. We keep going to the Old Testament, something that we are not living by. We're New Testament believers. So when progressive Christians and leftist Christians are honestly, by what they quote, they're New Testament believers. They quote the New Testament more than the Old Testament in a lot of cases. And the problem is with the right leaning like Christians or the Christian conservatives and conservative Christians is that you use the Old Testament more than the new one. And that's kind of a little bit of a problem depending on the conversation, debate, and argument that you're having. Like, you should use the New Testament more if you're a New Testament believer, right? That makes sense to do. That's why the leftist Christians are maybe gaining more popularity, because they're New Testament believers. So they're quoting New Testament stuff, but somehow, and for some reason, conservative Christians and Christian conservatives and right-wing Christians keep using the Old Testament, something that we do not live by anymore. Again, I'm not saying that the Old Testament we should throw away. I'm not a leftist Christian, okay? But, like, if we're living in the new covenant, shouldn't we quote more of the New Testament scriptures? That would make sense, because that's what we live by, the New Testament.
Slave people would beat their children to save their lives. If you don't behave, the slave owner is going to murder you. So you have to listen.
So that actually makes a lot more sense why spanking, especially in the black community, is like an essential thing. Because in that way, if like spanking the child would be more than an actual flogging from their masters. So, and that has just been not addressed in the black community. Like, maybe this is why we think spanking our children is like an essential thing, because at the end of the day, if they didn't spank their child, their masters would kill them, pretty much. A worse physical harm. So the lesser physical harm was mercy, comparing to the unjust punishment that the master would do to the slave back in slave days in America. So that I can agree with, and that I didn't know. I am learning. Not saying that these people may be, I wouldn't go to these people for a lot of things, but when it comes to something like this, that makes sense, and I didn't realize that, and that should be addressed in a good way, not in a bad leftist take way. But anyways.
Me and do what I tell you to do. So we have, you've seen how Black moms and how Latino moms are portrayed all over, and there is this strict, but white kids behave differently, and it's allowed and it's permitted.
I think they're more free range. I don't know. I'm just saying. I'm not. Okay, maybe I shouldn't make that joke. I'm sorry. But if I'm actually correct, I think actually most white families are less strict because they don't have they have less of a risk, and that's why most Black and Latino households are a little bit more strict, because they have more of a risk in general in real life. So when I think of it now, spanking again is like mercy comparing to a cop shooting you just because of your skin color, or according to these studies, or according to the statistics, or according to the data, more Black people are likely to blah 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 do bad crime. I wonder why that's that way. But anyways, so I'm learning something,
and that comes from all this history, of abuse and of lying about what are the expectations of people of behavior. Because when white kids misbehave, it is just like, oh, they are children. But when people of color's children misbehave, it's because they are not godly. in a
What? No. No. See, I was agreeing with you till it just took a wrong turn. It all went smooth till it all turned downhill with race, in a sense of a way. Like, sorry, no, not with race, with religion. In some cases, like, oh, no, they don't think that. They don't. God's not in that equation at all. One is not in that equation, my friend. It's two. Okay.
even more deep way than white people experience it too. So, and this obviously it comes from the trauma generational that we've
I
carried.
mean, I guess he's saying because more black people have a more religious like thing, so when their child does something wrong, it's like they're not being godly. I guess I can see that most black people are way more religious, especially in the South. Especially in the South. But yeah, I can see that a little bit, but again, I don't think God is really in that equation that much. I think it's due to historical slavery and discrimination and violence. To where speaking what was a mercy comparing to in real life when you were an adult you could get shot or killed. So again, I don't think God really is in that type of equation, but you know, if you can put him in there, I think it's credit. I'll give you half credit for that.
with us.
I mean, yeah, I always have noticed that, like you said, but I would have never interpreted it in that way. But I'm drawn back to a comedy show that me and my boyfriend go see every once in a while. And one of his friends is Korean, and she talks about how incredibly strict her mom is. And I've talked to a lot of people, like you said,
Well, the reason why that is, I mean, I'm not a fortune teller, I'm not a mind reader, but most of the time, Eastern people have a big thing with honor and respect, to where people commit suicide if they're dishonorable to some people. Like, that's not a joke. Like, that does happen in the East, a lot of cases. Or they express honor more physically. And Westerners usually do honor and respect more of a, I guess, intellectually in a sense of a way, or more spiritually in a sense of a way. But, you know.
different colors, especially like Korean parents, Black parents, I've heard Mexican parents, where a couple things. One, them not being permitted to speak their native language at home.
Wait, there's their native language at home, as in like in their American home, or
Outside of the home for fear that they will be.
wait, what? Sorry.
Where a couple things. One, them not being permitted to speak their native language at home or outside of the home for fear that they will be, you know, that crimes will be perpetuated against them, that they'll experience racism, or they will be disadvantaged.
Yeah, I think that does actually happen, which is sad and should be addressed.
Because they're not speaking the right language, and also just that like incredible strictness. Like I have a Korean friend, you know, just like study really hard. You have to work so much harder and be so much better and be so much more perfect to just line up and plateau just at the same level as their white peers.
Yeah. Which happens
in some cases. Yeah, I'm not saying they like. I think people who come from other countries who speak different languages should be able to speak their language and not be demonized, especially if it's a private conversation. That's why I see a lot with Mexicans and a lot. I live in a multicultural like city in the state. Isn't the way I live in New Orleans, and also Walmart is very cultural. They're very multicultural. Walmart is very multicultural, so yeah. And what I've seen and heard in sensible ways that when people from different languages or who speak different languages like have private conversations, they speak their own language, which makes sense because they don't want others to hear in a sensible way. So I just noticed that, which makes sense. And I think they should be able to do that, especially if it is a very private conversation between them. They should be able to speak their language. So the majority of the people who are Western, who might not know what they're saying, you know, they're like, okay, they're speaking a different language, they move on. It just depends where you are. Now, if you're somewhere like downtown, and it looks like people with different languages huddle up, they might be holding weapons, you might be able to report that. Again, that's rare, but you know, I guess that's why some people are afraid that people speaking with different languages, so they do codes or whatever. I'm like, no, it's usually because of private conversations. Okay, calm down, calm down. um, and yeah, but I still think people with different languages should learn our language, so if they ever need a job, they can, get a job more effective. I mean, that's just a thing. That's what all countries you have to do to improve society. If you need to know another language, that's what you have to do. If I go to Mexico, I most likely might have to speak Mexican. I might have to get a translator or speak Mexican myself. Because, I mean, that would make sense. Just how you do
to beat
it.
men and women.
Yeah.
Women work that much harder for the same jobs that men apply to.
That shouldn't necessarily be, but most of the cases, it's been shown in some cases. Okay, with studies and data, again, like I've been saying, data and studies and all that statistics are blueprints to what could happen based on the events that have been happening. So based on what have been happening, there's a chance that women might not work as much. I forgot why, but they just don't. That's just that's a statistical fact. Not saying that all women do, but most likely, women most likely do lesser time in jobs. So that's maybe why. I don't know why they do that. Just based on what we have observed, we done a statistic, and that was the statistic that we got based on observing the norm, or what could most likely happen. Not saying that it will, unlike people like Crowder. Okay, I don't think, data and statistics are life. They're what could most likely happen in life, but not ultimately that's gonna happen. So you just gotta balance it
Because
out.
there is disadvantages, and that's just the way that it is. And it's funny to me when people say like, you're just playing the victim. I'm like, no, I'm just pointing out facts.
Yeah.
And it's I'm not a victim of it. I'm working, I'm doing my thing, but these are facts that we need to acknowledge, and they exist. But all of these things affect people of color in a different way. And then there's always like purity. Purity is associated with whiteness.
In a lot of cases, yes, depending on where you are, that is true. Purity is usually whiteness, or maleness, or straightness, or Christian, or right wing. Because I live in the South, so, like, yeah. Those are, like, your perfect tier people in a sense of a way, quote unquote. But that's not the case. What's also not the case is that no offense, but a very, very overweight in other things person isn't necessarily perfect or pure. Nobody really is pure, but that doesn't mean that I celebrate your dirtiness in a sense of a way. If you're overweight, I mean, I'm not gonna say, ha 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 ha, you're overweight, get a job, grow up. That would be wrong. No, I would say maybe you should lose some weight, in a nice way. Because I might care for that person, because I know being overweight is not necessarily a good, healthy thing. So, yeah, it's just, and I wouldn't say, again, nobody's pure, but I wouldn't celebrate your impurity in a sense of a way. I'll try to be the best person I can be. I'll never be pure, but I'll be the best person I can be, but also, not celebrating my dirtiness. fixing my dirtiness, cleaning up my dirtiness. And I feel like Jesus is the only way to clean up your dirtiness. I wouldn't say dirtiness, I wouldn't say impurity, but I guess wrongdoing, I guess you can say.
White women are seen as pure.
Yeah.
Well, again, it just depends on where you are, but if I'm correct, generally speaking, yes. Well, I mean, if you type in woman, you might most likely see the majority of them being white. So it just depends.
Are sexual.
Yeah.
And they are sexualized in a so we have to deal with, and if you put all of this in subconscious children's minds,
which most people don't. Most people today in society don't say whiteness is pureness. I mean, maybe then again, maybe the minority Nick Fuenteses and Richard Spencers of the world, maybe, but the majority of the world, no. So, like,
that is interpreted is really dangerous and damaging.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know the reference for this, but I know that there was some study done where they had a black doll and a white doll, and they brought it to children of all races and asked which one was good and which one was bad.
Mm-hmm.
And
oh no, it was, I guess, the white doll. Systemic racism? No, most dolls are white because it's more cheaper to do dolls that are. It's like with animation. It's just easier with white characters because generally white is more plain. You don't need to add color, you don't need to add some fabric, you don't need to add some part of linen or whatever you use, or some type of paint. Well, with non-white characters or dolls or toys, you have to do more detail, which is good. That shows the value. I'm not saying both of them are not valuable, but the one that might be more darker skinned, quote unquote, or darker colored, most likely had more detail. With the white one, maybe not that much. So I wouldn't use the black doll, white doll thing. I mean, I'm sorry, I'll be like, well, of course they would pick the white doll, it's more plainer. And most dolls were white. Should that be addressed? Depending on how the doll industry is like, yes, it should be addressed. If the doll industry is whitewashed in a sense of a way, it should be addressed. But like, that's just, for somebody who worked with dolls, maybe they can tell us if it's true that a white doll will be more easier to make than a black doll in a sense of a way. Because one takes more detail and more time, while another one doesn't. It just depends.
I think 100% of the children said the black doll was bad and the white one was good.
Yeah, because the children Harvard did a study on when children start showing biases, racial biases. Around 3 years old, they start.
3? I'm sorry, a 3-year-old showing racial bias? It depends on where they are. If the majority of their time as a 3-year-old was around white people and rarely with black people, yeah, and vice versa. I wouldn't say the biases is good, but I mean, in this case, it would be by raising. If you have a 3-year-old that's been seeing both black, white, Asian, Hispanic, then, as they grew up, they generally tend to not have biases of any kind. So that should be important as well. And that should be addressed. Isn't it?
Racial biases. So, if you think that you should wait until your kids are teenagers to talk about race, you waited too long.
Sure, a 3-year-old will understand. Like, come on, are you really going there?
It's the same. You can't wait to talk about sex.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! No! Oh, why? No! Why? The cringe. Okay. Oh no. I was afraid it would go to that point. let's just let them talk about rocket science where we're at. And I'm sorry, I'm full on conservative with this take. It's not discriminately, but oh boy, yikesers. Why? No. Kids should only be worried about which TV show of Batman are they going to watch. Like, come on, like, I don't think they should be worried about their how they um yikes, I don't know how to say this without some people saying maybe mean things in the comments, but I'm going to have that anyways. I think your identity develops as you grow. Finding your identity is a developing thing. So with children, I don't think you should teach them how to find their identity so fast. The beautiful thing is they should, as they're growing, find their identity. Not their identity is this and always this at this age, at 3 years old. My child is this because my child said it. I'm sorry. Like, no, a 3-year-old is not concerned about their identity. They don't even know what that is. All they care about is when they're gonna get their milk. I mean, like, let's be real here. Like, come on.
Appropriate conversation for anyone who got their
Absolutely.
panties in a bunch of.
Appropriate, yes. How do you do that, my good fellow? Oh boy.
Showing racial biases around 3 years old, and they start preferring whiteness.
At 3 years old, or like really? Like, they prefer whiteness at 3 years old. Maybe because they've just seen more white people. I don't know. If you talk to a 3-year-old, do you know what systemic racism is? I don't think they would. I don't even think they would care. Like, come on. It's a 3-year-old, guys. It's a 3-year-old. Like, come on. Like,
Around between 3 and 5 years old. And
okay, sure. I'm sorry. Like, come on. 4 or 5-year-old racial bias? Really? I'm sorry. No,
color
no.
show biases earlier than white children. This was all a Harvard study.
Wow.
Just because it's Harvard doesn't mean it's it's ultimately correct. Especially if this study was in 2014, which I don't know. I just did that randomly. Please link me that study to see how old it is, because that matters as well, because it's development. Like with COVID-19, it's a developing it's a developing illness. We already know enough about it a lot, but that's why there's shutdowns, because more of the percentage of people are getting it, so we just shut it down. Then we open it back up. It's a developing thing. It's not communist China government. It's determining shutdowns and things based on how many people get the illness. It's a developing thing. It's not okay, 55 people got it. We can open. We don't never need to close, even though it's 100 people. Now it's 1,000. Keep it open. No, close it down till the infections go down. And when the infections go down and everything else is okay, you slowly open up. It's a development. Same thing with identity, with 5-year-olds. It's a 5-year-old. It doesn't care about identity at that point. It shouldn't. It's a developing thing.
Which is really interesting and makes sense because we experience the backlash of it more than white kids do. So
Right.
it's just absolute unawareness. And my husband is from Washington State, a small town at the border of Canada and the States. And I went to visit, and he took me to this fair, like a fair, a country fair.
Mm-hmm.
And I walk into this fair,
Oh my
and
God,
I
I'm
am
scared already.
the only
Oh no.
the only person of color.
Wow, I haven't felt that much. I kind of have. Sometimes I can count the black people. It's like with campouts with scouting. That's because Boy Scouts was usually a white Southern boy thing. I mean, one time I think they were playing Let It Go, and one kept saying this song is gay. Pardon my language. They did say that. I'm like, what? Where am I? I mean, that I don't want to get in a conversation with that. Boy Scouts isn't racist or sexist or homophobic, but Boy Scouts have been traditionally Southern white boy people. No offense. I'm just saying, because I'm a scout. And most of the time, it's like a flood of white people. And I can count like maybe 4 black people and like maybe 3 people of color. And also, a lot of cases, white people are more adventurous, and there's a lot of adventure like stuff in Boy Scouts, so there's that. But like, I think there should be more representation of color in Boy Scouts. We should, because Boy Scouts is a good organization. It has its downfalls. It has its things that it needs to address. But overall, it's a great organization. So yeah, not gonna get all into that, but you know, I'm not saying that again. Boy Scouts is systemically racist. It's like, well, majority of them are white, and sometimes that's just how it is. The majority of cowboys are white because most black people are not cowboys. There are black cowboys, but I'm not gonna force more black cowboys. Most black people don't want to be cowboys or rodeo riders or bull riders, and that's okay because that just happens sometimes. Most rappers are black. Most people who listen to rap are black, and that's okay. There's nothing racist about it. Unless if it does imply some sort of fear, or the majority of a race wants to be, another race says no, or there's some systemic things holding them back, then okay. But when it comes to bull riding, most of the people who I would talk to who are black would say, no, I don't want to be a bull rider, no. They might say, I want to be a basketball player, football player, most likely. So, yeah, I mean, sometimes it's just popularity, just based on popularity and just culture. Some of it is race, so some of it is systemically racist, but that does need to be addressed, but sometimes it's just cultural and just regional. Anyways.
And I just looked at him and I said, hey, there is no people of color.
Does that matter? Does that supposed to matter in a lot of cases? Is that an issue? Like, is that an issue? Like, yeah, there's more white people in Boy Scouts, and like, I don't be like, Dad, did you know that? Dad, did you know more white people are in Boy Scouts? I think that might be an issue. Like, sometimes it might be, but like, no, I'm not gonna be like, there's not that many black people here, or there's not many white people here. Maybe we should get out of here. Like, no. Like, what? Okay, there are people, if it's not systemic or racist, or there's no actual bias, then okay, like, that just happens based on popularity of fame and popularity of what it is.
And he said, it had nenever occurred to me.
I wonder why. Because maybe sometimes it's not just about color. Maybe it's just not about color. Maybe it's something else. No, it can't be, can it? Oh, yes, it is. I do have other things to do. I'm not making excuses, but just, it's long. Like 43 minutes, 16 seconds, precise. Hey, real quick, if you want to dedicate your life to Christ, aka get saved, or if you're a backslider and want to rededicate your life to Christ, or if you want the baptism of the Holy Spirit with the evidence of speaking with tongues, those prayers are in the description down below. Have a good one.